By this point, drinking regularly, smoking weed regularly.
Dad's in prison, you're doing rap music, your mom's still a Christian doing her own thing. Where did you go from there?
At this point, developed this attitude, like an angry attitude towards God, if God even existed.
I had probably like 15 grams of oil in my backpack, my mini rig, my butane. I walk in the front door, it's all on the counter.
I actually physically felt him. I knew he was real.
Testimonies are my favorite thing. The active God right now, changing lives daily, is the exciting thing to watch.
She goes, because of what you felt tonight, the devil's coming for you.
I'm pulling down the mask.
And I want everybody to find their way to God.
And welcome back to ROI Productions. We're back with another testimony. We have Joshua Jameson here. I'm happy to have him on the podcast. If you want to introduce yourself real quick, Joshua.
Yeah, Joshua Jameson from Wenatchee.
Awesome.
Made the trip over.
Dude.
Excited to do this today.
Dude, it's amazing to have you. Joshua is from Wenatchee, a small town that I grew up in. If you go onto one of our previous podcasts, Chris Newberger, he's one of his friends. He met him through that whole entire experience as well. It's going to be an awesome instrumental part of the story, so I'm excited to dive into this testimony. People from Wenatchee, man, they're just getting saved now. Come to Wenatchee, get saved. So if you're not a believer, head on over there and you're going to feel the power of God. So Joshua, dude, welcome. It's good to have you part of the podcast. Dude, it's exciting.
Yeah.
God has moved in your life. I have heard a lot of your testimony that we talked over the phone. It's our first time actually meeting in person. So it's good to put a face to the name because I actually didn't even know what you looked like before.
Right.
But dude, welcome over. I'm excited to hear how God has just continued to move in your life and what he's doing now. And let's talk about a little bit, like, where did you start, man? Like, how did this whole journey start for you?
First of all, I want to give thanks to it's Wesley, Matt, you just mentioned Pastor Chris, and yourself for blazing the trail, so to speak.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's good to have you.
You guys did an awesome job on the first testimonies. I believe there's a huge potential power for this platform, and I'm really excited to see where you guys take it. And I think the world really needs more men stepping up. And so if you're watching this and if you get invited to come on this podcast, I challenge you to accept that challenge and come talk with Blake and do it. It's been fun preparing for this, just as, like I said, the last 2 weeks. Definitely, feelings of being a little nervous, a little unworthy, but
none of us are worthy, bro.
Right. So, but yeah, luckily I got, like you said, Pastor Chris, been able to chat with him. I was fortunate to see all the videos that you have up. And so, I feel like I prepared, pretty good and I'm excited about it.
It's awesome.
So, man. Where what all started?
Where you started. So like, not necessarily where you started to come to Jesus and God introduced himself to you, but kind of just give me a little bit of a background. Where are you from? Kind of like what was going on in your life back then?
So I was born in New Mexico, I believe El Rancho, New Mexico. Lived in Oregon shortly and landed in Wenatchee.
That's a weird transition from New Mexico to Oregon to Wenatchee. What brought you to Wenatchee? It's the smallest of all small towns.
So, I don't know. So at this time I'm like, 2 or 3 years old.
Okay,
so
that makes
probably sense. Family dysfunction,
right?
In reality, right? So, one thing I did, ask my mom, my dad, kind of like our history, not their history, but one thing I do know is that I came from a recent line of dysfunction, drug and alcohol addictions, mental disorders. There's suicides in my family. There's suicide attempts. And so way I sum it up is like the definition of what would appear as a generational curse, right? So it's like, it's not like I have to look, is anyone a believer in my family, right? I know my mom is. I know my a couple of my aunties and my uncle, and it's like, but past that, like, where did it come from? And kind of at this point, trying to make sense of life, right? How did I get here? And having a son myself, who just turned 8 years old. Like that's part of what I feel my duty and responsibility is to, like, what do I need to do to break this curse kind of thing.
Right, and take care of your son and do the right thing.
Yeah. But yeah, so, I mean, my mom is by far the biggest believer in my life. She has been, and she's loved me through, all of my, bad, what I call my lost season. She's always been there for me.
She's been a Christian your whole entire life? So
she became a Christian. She started taking me to church when I was a baby in New Mexico. It was also kind of fun, like asking her these questions about, kind of like things that I never really considered asking my mom. Like,
right, you didn't care about it.
How often did I go to church when I was a kid? When did you start going to church? And kind of things. She said it was off and on in the beginning. By the time we made it to Wenatchee, I think I was about 10 years old. Me, my mom, and my brother leave the house that we were growing up in, leave my dad, and move. And that was be the first time that I was like separated from my dad, and it was the beginning of an in and out relationship with him as far as his presence in my life.
He wasn't a Christian, right?
No.
Gotcha.
No. So, we're working on him. I think he acknowledges who Jesus is. It's not my place to judge, but I'm not 100% sure, that I would say that he's making it to heaven. We're praying for him. And, I think, I think God's working in him like he is everybody, right?
Praise God, man.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you moved to Wenatchee, and then you found out how often you went to church with your mom, and you kind of been able to have those conversations now. But when you were in Wenatchee, you were 10. You probably went through high school. Were you just kind of running around? What were you doing during high school, and what kind of stuff were you getting into?
So I have like a couple memories of like going to church when I was younger. It wasn't like a huge like thing. I have a couple memories of going, I think, to First Assembly of God, some on McKittrick Street in Wenatchee. I know, Dad moved back in, moved out. That was kind of like a couple times it happened. By the time I was at Foothills Middle School in 8th grade, I was suspended. I think I got suspended 8 times in 8th grade.
That's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy because I also went to Foothills Middle School.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to Foothills.
Right.
Yeah, I started going there in 8th grade because I was homeschooled halfway through. But I started going there 8th grade, and then I went to Wenatchee High School.
How old are you?
I'm 26.
Oh, okay. I was like,
yeah, no.
I was like, maybe we were closer together.
Different time, no.
No, so yeah, 8th grade. So, I mean, looking back on that now, it's just flagrantly obvious. Like, there was something, I was dealing with something.
Yeah.
Right. And I was, just reckless, I guess. You know what I mean? Throwing a snowball, like having a spit war, just dumb stuff, right? Teacher trying to take my skateboard and cussing her out. It was so bad that it got to the point where in order for me to come back to school, they wanted me to go take a UA. And I remember my mom driving me, and I don't know why, but I knew what the Center for Drug and Alcohol was, right? I knew that. And she pulled up, and I just remember being so mad at my mom that she was taking their side, right? And she was just like, well, honey, if you're not on drugs, then it should be fine, right? But I knew I wasn't on drugs. I knew I wasn't. I'd never even tried drugs or alcohol yet. But I get it now as a school and as a parent. You're like, what's going on with this kid? I distinctly remember that, right? And it wasn't till that. So I was in all like advanced classes, and so I had to take 2 summer classes in order to make it to freshman year. Whoa. Like they didn't want me back. I feel like, you said no. Just do these 2 classes, and you're the high school's problem now. Good luck, bud. Right. But it wasn't until that summer that I actually was like the first time I had tried alcohol. I remember getting done with summer school, going over to my buddy's house, and we would just take a shot out of everything, put a little water here, a little water there, and that was like my first experience in drinking.
Do you think a lot of that had to do with you starting drinking directly after the like UA basically was because
See,
you had been
nuts.
UA'd?
It's nuts, bro. Because I was like the last one out of my group of friends. Like I kind of became friends with the skaters, and we had, like my by high school, my dad's not around. My brother's probably away at college now. I'm skateboarding. We have freedom.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's taking care of my grandma. I got no men in my life, and but I was the last one to actually smoke weed, right? I remember watching my friends smoke weed every day for like months, right? And I stood strong. I was like, no, you know what? Like I'm going to college and I'm getting married and I'm having kids. You know what I mean? And and it was just one day. I remember the garage we were sitting in, and I, just caved under peer pressure, right?
Yeah.
And I was like 16, I think, by the time I smoked weed for the first time.
Wow, dude. I mean, that's pretty late, especially for being in the crowd you were in. So, I mean, that's good though.
Yeah. But yeah, hugely offensive that they, for me, it was like to take a UA. I think for sure I was like, well, fine, then I'm going to start drinking. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's directly after that. Yeah. You started drinking. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. By 16, my dad is in prison, right? And my brother's away at college playing football, I think, down on the Lewis and Clark. And 16. So yeah, this is like a kind of a pivotal point of, as far as not having men around and being free to roam. I end up forging my dad's signature so many times, right? He's in prison. I use his signature anytime I want to get out of class, anytime. And, I'm smoking like on lunch break. We're smoking after school, tried to do sports, but like you can't coexist in that environment, right?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. Stay in shape and do drugs.
Yeah, right. And just have the discipline and everything else, right? To play sports, right? So things are digressing, in my life. I don't know it at the time, but by this point, drinking regularly, smoking weed regularly, and I find rap music, right?
Right.
And
what was your calling when you first felt rap music? Like what attracted you to that the most?
So I think it started with partying on the weekends. Like it was weird is that I would start like freestyling, and everybody it was kind of fun and funny, and I could keep doing it. Like it was, so I think naturally it was kind of maybe the attention, right? But I was naturally talented, I think, towards it, right?
It's something you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went from there to recording, first song. And I think I just absolutely fell in love with the process, like hearing my voice, seeing the editing and, the writing of the lyrics, all of it. Yeah, man, it was, something that I pursued heavily, for, 10 plus years of my life. You know what I mean?
How many songs would you say you recorded?
I don't know, probably over 500.
Wow.
I was just.
That's awesome. Were you doing shows and everything like that later on?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We're doing, everything, all of it. Right. So, ended up opening up for Duro, Too Short, Mr. Fab, I believe in Spokane, the Knitting Factory, Nipsey Hussle down in Tri-Cities. Yeah, man, it was like everything.
You were in it. You were a pop star on the stage.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. It was predominantly like a lot of my life everything in my life was based around music. I made every decision, my friends, where I went, where I was, how I spent my time, how I spent my money, right, was all based on this idea that I was destined to be a star, right?
Right. And that was from when you were 16, right? Is when that started?
So it started at 16. Like that's when I first naturally knew I had a talent for it. And then it would progress, over the next 10 plus years,
Wow. And then you said your dad's in prison at that time as well. So your dad's in prison, you're doing rap music, your mom's still a Christian doing her own thing. Where did you go from there?
So what I remember about this time in my life, I remember going to Breath of Life Church. My mom would still try to fight to get me to church. This time I was 16. I pretty much do what I want when I want anyways, right? But, I would still make it to church every once in a while. And I remember Breath of Life Church. And I just remember a couple of things. It was like I really just at this point developed this attitude, like an angry attitude towards God, if God even existed, right? Because he had never done me any favors in my life. Like it just seemed like pain and like I didn't feel loved at all. Like I couldn't understand why in the heck I watched my mom write a check every week and give it to the church. Just blew my mind. We could use that money, those kind of thoughts. I remember going to church at Breath of Life, and I remember it just got to the point, my dad's in prison, brother's away. And what it was with my attitude was, it's just in my head, I just start rewinding like all the bad stuff in my life. And what I started associating church was, all these people that have their lives together and things are going good for them. Well, that wasn't me. And every time I went to church, I was easy to remember, my parents split up, my dad's, in prison. I think probably at this point, my brother had signed up for the military. He's at war, and during that, I don't know if people remember, but Afghanistan, Iraq, I don't remember what one was first. He went to both, but the news is just crazy every day. 67 soldiers die, 18 soldiers die, right? And I'm sitting here watching my mom deal with that. Just, it was heavy on her, and all this stuff was just combined at church. So I just stopped going.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
So
I just came to this realization it wasn't any good for me, and so I stopped going. Moving forward, so 17, 18, this is the first time I tried smoking an Oxycontin 80 milligram pill, right?
That'll put you down.
So it came, yes, it was, the fentanyl before fentanyl.
Yeah.
And, your environment, it was my best friend at the time, somebody I drank and smoked with, his older brother, right? Just doing it in the garage. And I just remember this day, I knew that was bad. Like I seen the tinfoil and I was like, I don't know. I just felt this once
you seen tinfoil and drugs and a lighter and a little bit of water, you're like, oh, this is not normal. Like smoking.
This isn't weed.
No,
this isn't
not
alcohol.
Normal, dude.
They don't sell this.
It's like freebasing Coke. You're like, this is not normal.
Yeah, that would come around that time too, and so but older brother's doing it. He's a little older than us. Watched my best friend hit it.
This is the older brother from Afghanistan?
No. My buddy's older brother.
Okay.
Yeah. No. So he's smoking. He hands it to my best friend at the time, and he takes a hit, and they pass it to me, and I'm like, and he's like, "Don't worry, it's cool." So peer pressure again, environment, right? Take a hit. So by 17, 18, I've dropped out of high school, right? I got my GED. I attended Wenatchee Valley College, what would have been my senior year of high school. Drop out my junior year. But by this point, I don't even know how it happened, but I'm selling Oxycontins to the whole town of Wenatchee, like that whole area, right? And basically, I've been to juvie once, 16, 17 comes. My mom kicks me out.
What'd they put you in juvie for?
Huh?
What'd they put you in juvie for?
I think it was a malicious mischief or something, right? So
I would check out.
Yeah. So it was, I just remember I didn't like it. I remember I popped like 24 Tylenol PMs. I knew, like when I went to court, I knew I was going into custody. I remember my mom, I guess she called the jail. They were freaking out. Right. And I was like, I just want to sleep for as long as I can. I wasn't like trying to kill myself or anything.
Right.
But, yeah, dude, I made it 2 days in. They said every single hour they came and did a check to make sure I was alive and awake.
Wow.
Right. And I don't even remember them waking me up like 3 times over the first 2 days.
That's great. 24. So, yeah, that's insane.
Like luckily, right? Praise God that I'm alive. Like I don't know, at 16 taking 24 Tylenol PMs, but like I was out for days. You know,
it's a good way to get through jail though.
Not a good way. Not a good way.
Not a good way to get to
Yeah,
jail,
yeah.
but it's a good way in your own head to sleep the whole time.
Yeah, at the time, I thought it was a good idea, right? Let's see here. So out of high school, in college, I'm selling Oxycontin 80s. They're going $80-$85, right? I meet this older dude who I didn't really realize until later in my life, but he's probably like my age now, and I'm 17, 18 years old, and I guess he tried to come in and take some of the clients, whatever, but I was just on top of my game, right? And so he realized it's better to work with me than to try to outperform me, I guess. And what happened is I ended up developing a relationship with this guy, and I was good at what I did, I guess. And
you had the high ground, bro.
Right. And so I start traveling to Everett, and this guy would front me $7,000 worth of drugs every 1 to 3 days. And I was taking trips back and forth, everything that came with that. I wasn't like using every single day, but I wasn't like afraid of using, right? I wasn't physically dependent or anything, but I liked to party. You know what I mean? At that time, I remember getting a hotel room and, get a 8-ball or quarter ounce of Coke, do some foilies, give everybody their own pill when it's time to chill out, pay for the hotel room, the food, any alcohol. I would just pay for it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you had money, bro. $85 a pop you make good money.
Yeah. And I was 17, you know what I mean? So nothing really mattered. My mom had kicked me out at this point. I was kind of happy, you know what I mean? Because I didn't have to deal with that anymore.
Do you remember why? Was it because you were selling drugs?
She found, I think, some of my stash, right?
Oh, wow. Yep.
Thank God she didn't find the cereal box, where I'd stack the thousands of dollars to go pay my guy. But no, it was a crazy. I have a crazy connection with my mom, I feel like. But I remember, maybe she might tell the story different, but I remember coming home and she was doing the dishes facing away from me. And somehow I knew that she knew.
It's just the energy, bro. It's the mom energy.
Yeah.
It's the scary energy, too.
All I say is, how long do I have? I don't know why. That's just like, it came out of my, how long do I have? She said, I want you out by the time I get home from work tomorrow. I was like, all right, done. You know what I mean? Now I'm free. Now I, don't have to, deal with the pressure of mom or the conviction or hiding, you know what I mean? Yeah, man, I was not on a good path.
Yeah.
Right.
Parents have a good way of just putting that off too. I remember one time I came home from partying in Chelan. It was like a giant party out there. You know how they get.
Memorial Day weekend.
Huge. Yeah, dude. Huge. And this beach house was like a triple story house on the beach, like one of those straight line ones, 2 bonfires, just like everything you wanted as a 16-year-old kid. I remember coming home the next day. I had lied to my parents about where I was at. I had probably 15 grams of oil in my backpack, my mini rig, my butane. I walk in the front door. It's all on the counter. I turn around, I walk right back out the door, and I never came home. And I was like, no. Yeah. But it was like a power move for parents, you know what I mean? They're just like, we don't even have to say anything. We're just going to put that there. Yeah. So, I get that, though.
Yeah, being a dad now, I can only imagine. That's difficult ground to deal with.
You'd be livid, yet you'd want to care about them and nurture them and get them through it. But at the same time, you're like...
you can't allow this.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So I drop out of college. I'm making money, selling pills, right? My dad, at 19, my dad gets released from prison. I remember distinctly going on this walk with my dad in Tacoma. My parents, during this, so let's back up a little bit. So a pretty traumatic event, I don't know if I was 13, 14 years old. Things that escalated with my mom and my dad. She ended up getting a restraining order on my dad.
Oh, wow.
Right? And I remember answering the phone. I was on the house on 9th Street, and it was my dad, And at this point, he's in and out of my life. I don't really know what's going on. I didn't know about drugs. My dad wasn't around, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I'm playing a basketball game. I didn't know if he was going to be there or not, And it's like those feelings that I remember. But he calls, I answer, and he's like, Josh, is your brother there? And he's like, look, your mom's taking me away from you guys. I want you guys to be ready. I'm going to be there in 10 minutes. I'm coming to say goodbye. I'm going to kill myself.
Wow.
heavy, right?
Wow, it's super heavy, man.
You know, I at 16, I remember having a breakdown about this, like having nightmares about this. I remember like in front of my guy friends, like crying, like I just couldn't stop crying this one day for like hours. You know what I mean? And I was like locked myself in the bathroom at one of my friends' house, and they're like, "What's going on?" You know what I mean? Finally, they like get in the door, and I'm laying down crying. They're like, "Bro, what's wrong?" You know what I mean? And I'm like, "I don't know." You know what I mean? Like, just this thing, and you know, and it's just this one of those events is like, you know, as a like now as an adult, like looking back, like, man, there's like a lot of like little traumatic things that have happened in my life.
Just build up,
right? Just like basically it's like from when I was born, right? Just like that I look at now, like, well, I wouldn't have said that when I was a kid, right? But obviously it's developing. I'm getting suspended in school. I'm using drugs. I'm using alcohol, right? I'm on a super ungodly path, you know, making music. And just like all these things are adding up. And my dad gets out of prison, and he knew what I was doing, but he was smart enough not to say anything from prison because he knew I wasn't going to listen. You know what I mean? And parents are divorced, and he gets out, we're in Tacoma, we go for a walk, and he's like, "Look, man, you know, I know what you're doing basically. Why are you doing it?" And in my head, I thought I was doing it for music. Right. And he basically just proposed a question. He's like, "Well, how far has that got you?" You know what I mean? You know, oh, not very far, right? I was more doing the lifestyle of it. I wasn't really, you know, building up this wealth to invest into a music career and promotion. And I was just...
You were making the money lost, and
having fun. Yeah. I was just having fun. And every once in a while recording music. My parents offered me to stop selling drugs, stop doing drugs. They would help, and my brother, they would help me get recording music equipment if I moved home.
Wow.
And, you know, I accepted.
That's awesome. That's a good trade-off.
Yeah, I accepted. 19, 20 years old, I start actually making real music. Like I already start working on my first mixtape. I'm getting better at editing, getting way better wordsmithing, so to speak. And kind of this is just, that would be my life for a couple of years, right? Mixtape, music. I wasn't like heavy using drugs. I was just hyper focused on music, right? And I was like self-taught in all the engineering, Pro Tools, and editing. Like I said, my friends were based on music, everything. And it got to the point where my brother introduced me to a guy. Shout out to Tony. Or he met overseas. Kind of was like a manager mentor kind of thing, and he helped me put together a solid mixtape. Sponsored by a DJ. This led to me doing an industry mixer down in Louisiana.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. So I went down there. For you guys that don't know, industry mixer is basically to perform for some labels, like some A&Rs or people from labels. There's like 8-10 people performing, and these labels come to one spot instead of looking at 8 different shows. They perform for the labels, and if they like somebody, you know, that's your shot, so to speak.
That's cool.
Right. And I dropped the ball. Thank God I left that mixer with no interest from any record label. Right. It was devastating to me at the time.
Right.
But I see that as God's grace. Like there was a what I realize now is like a huge, like the devil really was battling for my soul. Like he has been my whole life. Right. And it wasn't until recently that I really understood that. But like, you know, I get signed to a major label. I know I'm not here talking to you right now. Right.
Yeah.
Like I would have been
somewhere else,
so far left field, away from God, you know? And so this is the first like God moment that I like that will stick with me for the rest of my life. Right. Get out of industry mixer, nothing. Right. It's cool. I'm Louisiana, New Orleans. Like we're having fun. And, we're getting ready to fly out. Everybody flies out before me. We're checking out of the hotel, and we're waiting for the car to be pulled up. And this older gentleman came up to me and asked me my name. I said, "Hey, man, what's your name?" I said, "Joshua." He says, Joshua, can I tell you what your name means in Hebrew or something like that, right? And I don't remember what he told me my name meant in Hebrew, but then he goes on to tell me, he's like, can I tell you something? Can I share something with you? And he's like, life's kind of funny, man. God's kind of funny. Us humans kind of do it a little differently than how God does it. And he's like, he let me know he was a pastor, right, of a church, but he liked to park cars on the weekend just to meet random people and share God. Right. And he goes on, he tells me this story, and he's like, hey man, so, in life, we study in school, a trade, business, whatever, right? You study, you take a test. Right. You study, you take a test. You train, you take a test. And he's like, God works a little bit differently. And he says, see, now God, what he does, he gives you a test, and then he wants you to study. And I was like, what is this dude talking about? Right?
Yeah, you're like, what?
Yeah. And he says, and if you refuse to study, he's going to give you the same test. And guess what he wants you to do? He wants you to study. But if you just keep going and you don't sit down and study, that test is going to get harder. And just remember that he wants you to sit down and study. Now, this was, I don't even know how I remember this, right? That's how I know God's involved.
Right.
Like, this meant nothing to me at the time. Right. It isn't until 10 years later where, like, it's I don't know why it's in my memory. I've remembered it throughout my journey.
It's a seed. It's planted seeds that bring you to God. Yeah.
And so this is like the first moment where I don't acknowledge it in the moment. I don't know it's God in the moment, right? But that's at least in my life, that's how it's kind of worked for me, is like there's these moments of God being there, me running away from God, sitting down and study, and then I realized, oh, that was God. Oh, whoa, no, that was God. That was God. That had to have been God. God was there the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, even, and it's crazy. The further I get closer to God, the more I feel like I see, like I said, the devil really wanted I feel like he really wanted my soul. I really feel like I'm supposed to be dead, or I'm supposed to be in prison for a long time. Like, this is all, a little bit funny games. We're about to get into, what I call my lost season, Moses and leading the people, the 40 years of wilderness, like, just, everything. So it was that moment, right? Just these moments, like I said, we were talking about earlier, that add up. And, for me, kind of what I realized, like a testimony, for you people define testimony, right? For me, like I shared with you on our phone call, a month ago, was like, testimony to me is a ongoing love story between one person and God, where the evidence is undisputable. Amen. Like, you can't dispute it, right? And maybe somebody else could dispute it,
but you can't.
But I could never dispute it. Right. Right.
And this is the first moment. God, he's like, oh, that was God.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I didn't know it then, right? I know it now. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. That's the power to it, though. Because, you look back and you see those little seeds, like I said, planted in your life that build up to one moment. Yeah. Right? And you think, okay, well, this time I should have died. You could maybe think you're lucky or something, whatever it was. Right. And then you look back and you're like, no, that was God. Yeah. Or another moment where you took those PMs, the Tylenol PMs. Yeah. You should have died. Yeah. Maybe you were just lucky, but no, that was God. Yeah. So that's really, really what it is.
Right on. So around this, somewhere in this, I kind of get my timelines mixed up, but soon, right now, I'm about to meet the mother of my extremely handsome, smart, strong, courageous son, Jackson Jameson. Got a picture of him here on the shirt. One of our pictures we took together when he was younger. I'm 21 years old. She's 19. She's undercut. She's used, I think, her sister's ID to get into the bar, and I meet her Christmas night of all nights. Right. Wow. Kind of lets you know, like, where I was at with God, right? At 21 years old, I'm at the bar on Christmas night, right? And so I was unaware until recently, like I just said, like how much the devil wanted my soul, and from 16 to 27, like I said, every decision was based on pursuing music. And I know now it wasn't just I wasn't pursuing music; I was making the devil's music. Right. There was nothing godly, nothing wholesome about the music that I made. Some of it was like an emotional release, but it quickly, maybe like my first project was 100% emotion, like just telling my story. But then it turned into glorifying, all the devil's work, right?
Drugs,
Women,
girls,
the drugs,
sex.
the fast money, the violence, the pride, all of it. Right. And it wasn't really until this last like year or two, like I just realized that, like this last year maybe, like it was all of it. You know what I mean? And it's crazy how long in my life I worshipped myself. I was the like everything was about me, and I was gonna be a millionaire. I was gonna be on tour. All the girls, all the drugs, all my homies were good. Everything was paid for. I lived in this delusion for the majority of my life, and somehow attracted the attention of a stand-up woman who's my son's mom, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how that all happened, but for some reason she liked me, right? And I liked her, and it ended up, we spent years together. It wasn't until something traumatic, and it wasn't until something like I kind of avoid trauma, like from like that, my dad getting out of prison to like, till my son was born, basically, for like, so a good chunk of years, it's like smooth sailing, kind of, so to speak. Maybe I avoided trauma, or I just didn't deal with trauma. One thing I learned now is I never learned in my whole first 30 something years of my life how to deal with trauma or emotion, right, in a healthy manner. It was just default: music, drugs, late nights, women, anything but like actual internal reflection, anything but looking up.
No
right?
processing, no God, no nothing.
Yeah. Every once in a while, like, you pray, but that's like, those
Desperation moments.
Yeah. Desperation, like immature kind of like prayers, like, you know what I mean? But, it was still there, but a very small, part of me, like, so, trauma's about to start happening. During this time, I became a journeyman industrial painter. I traveled, greater part of 3 or 4 years. Traveled around Washington, Oregon. Shout out to my bridge boys. Can't wait to share this with them. But working on bridges, sandblasting and painting bridges, really good money. Somehow, through music, met somebody and they got me a job, and, whatever, off and running. And it's the point where I was renting a recording studio in like the heart of Portland, living in Everett with my woman. You know what I mean? I remember it's still the same me. Like, I have money. I wasn't selling drugs now, but I still have money.
Yeah.
I'm paying for my friends to come down, take the train down to Oregon, right? I'm paying for the drugs. I'm paying for the food. I just want people recording. I just want to keep progressing this idea, right? At some point, me and Jackson's mom, she gets pregnant, right? And I wasn't prepared, to be honest. Right. And it makes sense. I didn't have any men in my life, any godly men, I wasn't prepared. And if I'm being honest, it takes a special kind of man to actually be prepared before your first kid gets here. It's like not until the kid is here, like that it's actually real.
Right.
The woman has the advantage.
Right.
They got the kid in them.
Right.
You can feel it. You can feel it. But it's like, it's a whole new level.
As a guy, you're not really doing much different until the kid's actually there.
Yeah. I was underprepared. Should have been reading about parenting. Should have been saving and managing my money better. Should have been developing a plan for my family, right? No. Devil's music. It's all good, baby. We're good. I'm going to get rich and famous. We're going to be good, right? Everybody's going to be good. That's the delusion where I was at. So I'm working in Portland. She's living in Everett. Making trips, every couple weeks whenever we had the time off to come up. And throughout her pregnancy, I remember she had some like discomfort and pain, I remember getting her like the pillow, the massage heat blanket and all this stuff. And she had like a high tolerance for pain. But I'm home this weekend, and I don't remember exactly how it went, but she was in a lot of pain. I was like, all right, we're done. We're going to the hospital. You know what I mean? We go to the hospital and they take tests. And then, thank God there was this nurse. Like they were about to discharge her. And this nurse is like, no, this doesn't explain it. Just run the test again. And I don't remember exactly how it went down, but I remember I was on the phone, probably with family, and this doctor comes out of the room. And I don't know what he said or how he worded it, but I know in my mind what I heard. I heard there was 100% chance either her or my son was going to die.
Oh.
Right? And that they were rushing her down to Harborview to do, an emergency delivery. And she was a soldier through it. It's like it didn't even phase her. She's like, no, we're good. We're both going to be fine. And I'm like, but you didn't hear what the doctor said to me. I like, this is like trauma on a whole new level, right? She's like, no, go home, get the bag and everything. And I'm going to go and meet me at Harborview. I remember driving up to Everett to go get our stuff. And I am crying so like I had to pull over. I couldn't see. I'm on the phone with my mom, my brother, my brother's wife, who is in the medical field, right? And I'm like, I don't get to pick. I don't want to pick, and like this isn't happening to me, kind of thing, right? Boom, on the way down, emotions through the roof. I stop and get high. I'm like, dude, I need to calm down before I get here, right? And this is going to set a very bad trend, moving forward as my life gets more traumatic, right? And turning to drugs. She has HELLP syndrome. Her liver is shutting down, basically slowing the baby's growth, right? He's super premature. He is born, right? I think it's 32 weeks, but his development was like 28 weeks, right? And he's in the NICU, right? Not only that, her blood platelet, like she's a huge risk to bleed out. And that's what they're watching is like, cause her liver and her platelet count, what allows your blood to clot. And it's just high intensity. We're there for like a day and a half before she actually has an emergency C-section for Jackson. And, dude, trooper. I remember watching her and it was just crazy. The blood, whatever, all this stuff. They get him out, right? And they're like, you want to cut the umbilical cord? And I'm like, no. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this tiny little thing premature. I'm like, no, just make sure he's good. You do. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to like hurt him or would it just like, and then I'm like back to her and she's like, no, you go with Jackson. Right. And I'm like, dude, they said Jackson's going to go, all right. Right. And I'm here at the hospital, probably high. And this is another one of those moments. I remember praying to God. Right. And I don't know if this is how it works with God or whatnot, but I remember praying the prayer. And I remember saying, that if you could spare both their lives, I will serve you. Right. And it was one of those, I'll remember that forever. Right.
Yeah.
Now, he came through, you know what I mean? Like I said, whether or not that's how it works or not, but they both made it out of the hospital. He made it out of the hospital in speed time, right? I ended up quitting my job. I was a stay-at-home dad. This whole experience with, it was just crazy, right? I remember reading my son his Bible. Grandma Tammy got him a Bible, right? And I remember it was just this thing. I didn't really think about it, but it's just something I knew that I needed to do, right? And so every morning, I'm reading my son the Bible. He's not even, barely opening his eyes. I just get it in his head, get it in him, right?
Right.
And I remember like doing it. It was just like one of those things. I was like, I have to do this. I wasn't reading the Bible for myself.
Yeah, it's just
like I wasn't sitting down and studying like that pastor had said, right? But I knew it's something I like. My son was better off if I did this for him. Right? I have no relationship with God at this point, right? But I knew that obviously somehow from my mom taking me to church and all these things, like it was ingrained in me. So, yeah, man, it's I'm struggling with using drugs, right? At the time. and his mom knows it. She asked me to basically cut out all my friends, right? And these are all the friends I made music with for my whole life. I haven't given music up yet, right? I'm still like holding on to that, but I'm kind of starting to waken up. Like I have a family to provide for and whatnot. And so I cut out my friends, right? In the most like unmanly, unconfrontational way you can do. I write a Facebook message to 3 of my friends and then just basically deactivate or just uninstall my Facebook, right? 5 months later, one of my friends is dead, basically committed suicide, right? I log on, I see on Facebook that he had tried to get a hold of me during that span, right? That's something that also, would mess with me for a couple years, right? Because I feel like if I was there, if I was trying to listen to what she wanted and what was best for my family, but if I was there, maybe I could have talked him back, like all those questions that, that are endless.
Yeah.
And so I relapse. I'm sober. I relapse. I remember getting the call that he's dead. Boom, relapse. Get sober again, right? One of my friends is there, and he's sober. I know he's sober. I want to say goodbye to him in person this time, right? And like a man, better than, let him know he's the next one that's probably going to die. You know what I mean? He's shooting up heroin at the time, and I want to do it face to face. Whole thing gets blown out of proportion. Me and her end up breaking up. She thought I was getting high. I don't know. From here on out, it just got real dark, right? Separated from her, my son, going to what I call my lost season. I started slow, but I started doing the most,
And so you went through your lost season, and then so you're separated at this point, right? And you went into your lost season.
So, this part of my life is started slow, from driving other people around to selling drugs, stealing, boosting, stealing cars, robbery, drugs, guns, homelessness. It was all bad, right? And couple of key moments. I remember being in SCORE jail. I've been to all the jails over here: SCORE, King County, RJC, Whatcom County, like Kent City, like all of them, right? Mm-hmm. And there was this guy's ministering in SCORE jail. And I remember they came in and they played music. And I think it's Cody Carnes' Run to the Father. And it's one of these God moments that stick with me forever. I don't know why, but I was just bawling, right? I'll remember that song forever is part of my testimony. It was just evidence that God was there along the way. It wasn't, like I said, so this is all somewhere in 2017. I make it back to my son and his mom, but we're not, whatever. But I remember I'd been exposed to Pastor Earl, Shoreline City Church down in Dallas, visiting family. I remember watching online. And I remember I was by myself in the room. I remember tears coming down my face, and I remember raising my hand, right? And I remember saying, like, just I couldn't do it, right? I remember asking Jesus for help. Like, I couldn't do it. I knew that I needed to submit. I knew I needed to His help, right? Nothing was working out in my life. Back and forth, made trips to Colorado, Washington, getting sober. I got sober, 25 times on my own over these years. One time, super low, lost during all this lost season. And I remember I'm so hungry that I'm watching these people come out of Subway. And I can't ask any of them for help. I'm too prideful for that, right? And at the time, I go around the side of the building, and reflecting now, I realized I was like at my lowest point, and I just wanted to be alone, right? I didn't want the shame and guilt, and I go around the side of the building to be alone, and I'm ready to give up. Finally, like I'm ready to give up. I'm like, this is just life. Is just sucks, right? And I'm ready in my head. I go around. I sit down on this curb, and I put my head down, and I'm bawling my eyes out, and it was like, boom. Instantly, an arm came around my shoulder, right? And it was crazy looking back on it now, like the lifestyle and everything. Bro, you're like, what are you doing? Get off of me. Who are you? Is it someone that I know, right? Like, all those reactions plausible. I don't know why. I didn't look up. The only thing I said, I don't even know why these words came out of my mouth. I don't even feel like I said them. Well, I just said, "Are you a Christian?" And he says, "Yes, I am. I'm here to help you, son."
Wow.
And this was the moment, right? Like where I said it's undisputable. From that point on, no one could ever tell me or convince me that God didn't exist, right? It was like that undisputable evidence. Like, and this guy tells me that God told him to stop and help me, right? He buys me 2 meals, phone, get reconnected with my mom. And, yeah, man, a lot of other stuff, happens. I get escalated in my crime. It catches up with me, right? I get facing prison time. And I make it down to Colorado, right? In 2022, I get baptized, right? I've kind of submitted a little bit, right? And I get baptized. My mom is there. Church for All Nations. Shout out to them. They finally offer me a non-prison, sentence, right? And I come back to Washington expecting to go to court, turn myself into treatment. DOSA, you go to treatment 3 months, and then DOC for 2 years. I come back, go to court, and they're like, "Hey, we'll see you in a month." Right. And I got money on me, and it was like, it's like, what does, 99.9% of people do before they go to treatment?
Get high.
One last run. Right. And now I got more money than I've had in the last couple of years. And so what I do, I go buy, 800 fentanyl pills so I can sell them and I don't have to do any of the other stuff. I just kind of, last for a month, and, escalated quick. Right. That didn't work out how I planned it. Within like 30 days, I lose like 25 pounds. I'm up to smoking a gram of fentanyl powder a day.
Wow. Before
I go to treatment. I made my mom a promise I would go to treatment sober. So I actually, in the heart of Seattle, right by 12th and Jackson, like, where it's super, populated with the drug scene and everything else. I make it out. I get sober. I go to treatment. I get to treatment, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, man, I've been praying about it. God told me last night you're going to lead Bible study." And there's no way in my mind, right? No way. There's no way. I'm not smart. I haven't spent I don't know the Bible. I'm not. And he's like, "Oh, man, I'm sure about it." You know what I mean? Talk to my mom, my uncle. I'm like, I'm completely underprepared and outgunned for this kind of task, but I step up. God calls me to do it. I do it. And this is like the first time that I experienced, like, I knew for sure God was using me to do something for him, like for his kingdom, right? A phenomenal experience there at ABHS, from 6 men to like over 35 men in the, I think it was like 10, 11 weeks that I was there. Tons of grace and favor in that time. Right. And, man, yeah, there's just so much in my story, but I get out. Oxford, Wenatchee. I don't even know how I landed in Wenatchee. I filed for interstate compact to make it to Colorado, where my mom and dad and brother are. My cases are out of King County. Like, normally you would go to King County. Somehow I landed in Chelan County, right? I do have some family there.
It's a better county to be in.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I'm just now realizing, like, everything that's going on in my life, it's like there is a design and I am where I need to be, right? My aunt, my uncle who attend Grace City is how I came to Grace City. My other uncle, my cousin, like, I got a lot of family there, but, some strong Christians. And right. I try out Awaken, Sage Hills. I have a thing happening on Thursday night every week. So my aunt and my uncle invite me to Grace City. I decline. And then finally I realized my mom encourages me to start shopping for my own church. I was not being fed, where I was attending, and I was hungry, and history in the making, man. I meet Pastor Chris, right? I started attending Grace City for a couple months. Meet Pastor Chris. We go mountain biking. He's super active, helping, trying to be there for people coming out of jail. He does jail ministry. Super solid dude. I remember going mountain biking with him and some men, and it really impressed me. The example, Pastor Chris, he kind of like humanized, pastors for me, right? Because there's always like this. I don't know what it, but like in public space, whatever, you know what I mean?
It's almost like they elevate pastors a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think I do in my head, right? Like naturally, you're like, they're like a better human than me, obviously.
Right.
Right. Yeah, man, I get involved at Grace City Church. I start going to Stronger Men. And I start serving at Grace City, and Pastor Chris is like, "Hey, man, you should meet Blake." I went over and did my testimony, and that's how we got connected.
Yeah, that's amazing, dude.
A million other things in there, right? That I could share. I could probably talk about this for days, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
every testimony has so much to share about it, and I think the important part of every testimony is just understanding how God came into people's lives and how they changed you from who you once were to who you're now becoming, right? Because it's not like a who you were and who you are now. It's a who you were and who you're becoming forever. Because for one, you're never going to get fully to where you wish you could be, or to that like full perfect state.
Right.
It's a constant work to getting to just a higher level of yourself with God and understanding of the Bible. And Christians who have been studying the Bible for 20 years, it's the living word of God. So every time you read it, the same sentence could mean something different to you now versus it did last year. And, next year you could get something else through it because the experiences that you go through translate into, what you're reading. And as long as you're reading the Bible as a story of God instead of a story that's written for you, right? It's not to tell you what to do. It's a story of Jesus, and the story of God. And we take bits and pieces from that and collectively the whole Bible to translate it to, where we're going to elevate the lives of not only just us, but others too, right? Because we're called to evangelize through our testimonies and our stories to help other people, right? Because someone who hasn't been where you've been through, they're not going to understand 100% of, why it was hard, or maybe think, man, this guy is like, oh, he's way worse than I am, you know what I mean? But in fact, we've all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And there is no condemnation in what we have done now that we're with God. So I think it's really important to get your testimony out there and to share that testimony so that people can understand that, hey, you can be from any walk of life.
Yeah.
And people are going to relate with that. And even if they haven't been able to, just sharing your testimony is so powerful. And anyone who's going to hear it, it can change someone's life, and that's the goal with testimonies, is to change people's lives.
Plant that seed.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe if it's not now, maybe someone, down the road will be like, you know what? I heard this testimony a long time ago, and his name was Joshua, and I happened to stumble across it on YouTube, and man, I just remember something he said, and that's you never know, you probably will never know, about that, but that's not what we go for. We go for what God wants us to do and to share, and hope that it can help someone. The power of one, and you have the power of two, which becomes the church. So yeah, man, powerful stuff. Yeah. Tell me now, just in like a little brief segment here, like how are you constantly pursuing God now? Like what are you doing now to just pursue Him and walk with Him in accordance to what He's called you to do?
Yeah, a couple of things is I'm 5 years separated from my son. We're actually going today to King County to file the court paperwork.
Congratulations.
To move towards reconnecting with him, right? But what I really realize is Grace City Church, right? Stronger men, getting involved, serving, building a relationship with godly men, right? Something that after writing all this out, and I see like the biggest thing that I lacked in my life, let alone did I not have any men, I didn't even I've never had godly men in my life until this like last 6 months, right? And it's an organic process. We do Stronger Men once a month. The only time in my life where I've seen hundreds of men come together in a valley, and it's only men, to come glorify, worship God, give testimony, and all this stuff. But what, for me, it's crazy because, the court and everybody, they take your kid away and then they tell you to just be normal, act normal, do
Right.
what you need to do. Right. And I would never wish that on anybody. So any viewers out, drugs, divorce, separation, unwillful separation of kids, like all these things are very hard to deal with. Right. Like that pastor told me, right. There's this a couple times, I did Christian counseling, Bible study. I started taking time to sit down and study. And like I said, I could start seeing that God was actually there. Right. But it was me that was looking the other way. It was me that was walking the other way. Right. And so right now I'm in the season of, just having peace in the storm. Right. And because, that was like one of the reasons, like, I can't go on here. I still haven't even seen my son in 5 years. Like, go on and share this testimony. No, that's not what it's about. Right. And what I've been able to experience is peace in the storm, and being a part of Grace City, Pastor Josh, Pastor Adam, Pastor Kyle. Man, these guys are truth tellers,
Solid
straight
dudes.
up truth tellers. Pastor Josh even talks about, like, the world is hungry for the truth. And that was me. That's me. Right. And so I have a call to be obedient is kind of where I'm at. Like, intentionally seeking God and bringing the presence of God with me where I go. Right. That's like where I'm at. And so just connected in the church and building relationships and not, trying to, not trying to have this set plan that life has to go this, kind of letting go of the reins and moving along the journey. You know what I mean?
Dude, that's amazing. And I think that's important. And I'm going to talk to the viewer here for this one, is the fact that you need to walk in an alignment with God and what God's called you to do is going to be super, super important. And just taking that time to check in with God as well and being like, hey, is this still what I'm supposed to be doing? Watching for the red flags, watching for the doors to close, watching for the new doors to open, because every time you go somewhere new, some new thing could pop up for you. And God's plan is always evolving and changing. What you understood, and the key is what you understood as a human being of what God has been asking you to do from when you thought you heard that, is not always exactly what he's been trying to tell you. So making sure that you keep your mind open to changing with what God is teaching you and what you're learning is going to be super important. So again, Joshua, thank you so much for coming out here and being part of the podcast and telling your testimony and just really giving that vulnerability. I think that's a really important thing that a lot of people just don't necessarily give out 100%, but it's really awesome and inspiring to see the vulnerability, how God came into your life and, changed your life ultimately for his glory. So I know you're going to do great things. It's going to continue to be an awesome journey for you. I'm really excited to hear about, how everything starts turning out with your son and your family and all that type of stuff. So if you guys like this video, go ahead and do me a favor and like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Maybe leave a comment about, something that you've been going through in your life recently, or maybe a piece of your testimony. We'd love to hear about it. We'd love to chat with you guys. So anyways, thanks for coming back to ROI Productions podcast. We'll talk to you next time.